It's Friday, April 25th, 2014. I'm Jimmy Principe.
And I'm Trey Comstock, putting your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 73, your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy argues the Supreme Court for Apple and Microsoft to make more money, and I shove newly discovered art down Wheeler's pipes. So we start tonight with the FCC giving up its job, essentially. So, the FCC has declared that nothing is true and everything is permitted, if the Wall Street Journal is to be believed. The WSJ published this week that the FCC would be gutting its net neutrality regulations in their new updated regulations. So remember that the open internet rules were thrown out by a court with the heavy implication that the FCC should just go ahead and classify ISPs as common carriers like FedEx. In search of new regulations, the FCC seemed to have made a very strange decision. They're going to be allowing for pay for play, which means that a company like Netflix could be forced to pay an ISP for access to their customers and even more for higher speeds. 2010 FCC said this would hurt innovation and let companies not get away with not upgrading their networks. 2014 FCC seems to think otherwise. Secretary Wheeler took to the internet to defend his upcoming regulations, saying, quote, "The notice," this thing he's going to talk about,
Don't die, Trey. Don't die.
"does not change the underlying goals of transparency, no blocking of lawful content, and no unreasonable discrimination among users. However, the standard for unreasonableness has been changed to, quote-unquote, something that is commercially unreasonable," end quote, "to be determined by the FCC on a case-by-case basis. Hence, it is up to the FCC and Wheeler, who seems to be more friends of ISPs than customers, to decide what is unreasonable. In short, pay-to-play may soon become the price of entry." I'm really glad we don't host our own video.
Yeah, because this is freaking insane.
So like, when people say that net neutrality is dead, for once, they're not speaking hyperbolically. It's dead. Stick a fork in it. It's done.
The other fascinating thing about this is the EU just recently signed this whole thing about like how they want net neutrality and they're behind it, and like I don't understand this. I just don't.
No, I understand it perfectly, that fundamentally the European Union is run by people who like to govern. They like to govern things. They really like to govern. They are a government. They like to govern. I used to make this joke about the Bush administration, but apparently the Obama administration, in regards to communication policy, takes a similar process that they don't actually want to govern so much as support profit margins, which is all you can read this as.
Because at the end of the day, okay, so the
idea
day
you're another day older.
That it is, yes, the idea that this would be like required for Netflix or or Aereo, who we're going to talk about later, or, any number of video streaming services, Hulu, to actually have to pay to access consumers is ridiculous. And then here's my follow-up question to that. Comcast owns a small broadcasting company called NBC.
NBC, yes.
I'm told that it's relatively small and therefore irrelevant, but
well, no, see, they argue that they had this competitor called Time Warner, and that's why they could buy NBC Universal. They said that. And Al Franken,
and now they're saying, "Oh wait, but it's not anti-competitive because we're just buying Time Warner."
And now it's not anti-competitive to buy Time Warner, who was the key competitor that let them buy NBC. This is,
This is ridiculous, is what it is.
So I can understand. So right now, Comcast theoretically will still have to.
But they have to follow the old
rules, because that was one of the stipulations that actually had meaning, apparently.
For 5 years, I think.
For 5 years. And that time limit is not up yet, but it will be at some point.
2017, I believe, is the date.
So I mean, right now, Comcast, which is the largest internet provider in the country, will still have to live by the 2010 rules, but not for that much longer in the grand scheme of things.
No.
One of the arguments that I've seen floating around on Boing Boing and Daily Tech News Show is that there is an argument to be made about structuring the internet so that different types of traffic get different types of treatment, right? So, like, video needs a lot of speed, but BuzzFeed does not need a lot of speed, and nor does Dropbox, because they've kind of trained their users to back up at night. So I can understand, like,
or not to care how long it's going to take to back something up. You just kind of click and drag it in there, and
it just kind of goes.
It'll eventually get there. And
tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and who really cares? It's a Word doc. It's like 116K. It doesn't really matter.
Well, that's because people only upload Word docs. I upload 1.7 gigabyte video files.
I don't, only because I don't pay for a Dropbox. I have a Pogo plug for that. But I'm off topic. So, like, I get the argument, like, okay, so you treat video different from text, different from audio, different from backup services. And so each of those have, like, their own lane. And that lane has a different speed.
No. It's a series of tubes. It's not...
Right. Well, and that's why I used the pipes joke at the top of the show. However you want to start. So they have their own tube, or with a different pressure. Whatever. I get that, but that's not actually what we're talking about. What we're talking about is ISPs extorting money,
a toll to get on the road.
Right. Extorting money out of the people who make their service valuable, and then charging customers more to access this thing, and then making even more money, and then having even less incentive, which the FCC in 2010 argued that this would give them less incentive to upgrade their networks.
Because you're just stuck.
Because they're just making a lot of money off the networks they have right now. And they can't handle... They keep saying they can't handle the traffic, and now they have a disincentive to ever actually be able to handle all the traffic.
And
fascinating.
The common carrier thing is, I want to come back to that, because this is also the secretary that said, well, yeah, but I really don't want to classify them as common carriers.
Clearly, he still doesn't. Keep in mind, he used to work in the industry.
Exactly, because he sees it as not good for profit margins. I think he actually said that at some point.
Yeah, no, he did.
That was why he did not want to classify them as common carriers, because it was bad for the free market. I don't
know about the free market. It is certainly bad for those companies. Sure. Abso-friggin-lutely. I'm not arguing with that. I also don't necessarily care what's good for them.
I think that I've made this argument on the show before, and I'm going to make it again. I really, really think that they should be classified as common carriers, and that is the only way that this makes sense, because at the end of the day, they are providing a service that can be said to be essential in the way that electricity is essential.
Sure. I mean, Boing Boing made the argument that it is now essential to our economy.
Yeah, it is, actually. I would agree with that. And so if you provide, I might have to pay, the way it works for electricity is I might have to pay the power distribution company, in this case in Houston, it's CenterPoint. I may have to pay the power distribution company to set a new service to provide me equipment to serve my property. But once that equipment is placed, they don't control how much power I get. Well, except if we don't literally have enough power. But
you got to understand the flip side of that. Is you are paying per X amount of thing you use.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you don't, in most cases, excluding mobile, you don't do that for the internet. You just pay for the internet. And I use like several hundred gigabytes of internet a month.
You and I are excellent at using our significant portion of the... I keep wondering if I, by myself, am going to hit Comcast's theoretical, like their 250 gig a month max.
I haven't yet, but there's also like 2 households using our internet.
I push a lot of data.
I mean, yeah, I push a lot of data too.
But I'm not there. I'm at like, I think, actually, you can look this up. I'm totally going to go look this up.
This is very interesting podcasting.
Yes, no, I will look it up and post that somewhere.
The issue is, you want to make them a common carrier, fine, I guess, sure. But that does mean you're going to have to pay per gigabyte. Now,
I think that's coming inevitably, one way or another.
And that could potentially be a reasonable rate, right?
Because on these cellular devices, guess what? We moved away from unlimited for everyone except for...
Me. Specifically.
And Sprint. But
I still
technically,
have grandfathered in unlimited.
so
On
technically, I'm
AT&T.
on T-Mobile. I have an XS5 on T-Mobile, and I have unlimited data. But they say we're only going to provide you this. You're only paying for this much, and then everything after that's throttled. So whatever you get after your allotment, just be happy that you're getting.
Be thankful that it moves at all.
Be thankful that we're not charging you extra for your extra data.
Look, I actually probably would be fine paying per gigabyte if I could actually get access to all the gigabytes I need at a reasonable rate. If it doesn't if it's just like
I don't
5
want to
cents
pay
a
for
gig
like
or whatever.
tiers. I don't want to like. So the way it works for electricity is if you don't have X amount of usage, I think it's 750 kilowatts of or kilowatt hours of usage in a month, then you have to pay some transmission fee. But if you have more than that, then that is just included.
Look, there's going to be like bulk. There'll be
But
bulk pricing.
that's because it's a dumb pipe that is provided by Centerpoint, but Centerpoint is not the one that actually charges me for my electricity. It is any number of, I use Green Mountain, but any number of electricity providers. I want my internet to work the same way.
Sure, I'd be fine, and that's what a common carrier would get you. It's a trade-off in that you no longer have unlimited internet at home. But I would honestly, to have just consistent speed across things and not have to worry about these stupid, pay for play agreements, I'd be fine with that.
Especially with the move to more online content like your Azure Cloud and not only that, but like iCloud and
Which is also
right. Well, yes, and all of your Dropboxes and all of these different online services that people are using. And streaming services, and Spotify, and Pandora,
you
and
even
Netflix.
Look at like the future of sports, right? You have MLB.TV. NHL has an equivalent thing. The NBA, I think, has an equivalent thing.
Yeah, they do.
The WWE, admittedly not a sport,
an entertainment platform.
but they have a thing, right?
Well, but not only that, you also
Street
have
now has a thing.
You have ESPN3.
ESPN3, yeah.
Or is it 360 now? I can never remember. Was it 360 and became 3?
It was 360 and now it's
okay.
3, I believe. Or you even have like NBC Sports Network has something equivalent, and the Olympics are all
I'm
live
sure Fox
streamed.
does something equivalent.
I don't know.
Well, and March Madness is always streamed.
Yeah. So I mean, like sports programming is going that way. No doubt, at some point, NASCAR will have an equivalent thing, and I think.
Oh yeah.
As goes NASCAR, so goes the world.
Oh, okay.
Well, they are the largest sporting event in the United States that isn't the Super Bowl.
However, this could really solve the internet porn problem.
This would partly solve my porn problem?
No, the internet porn problem.
What's the internet porn problem?
Oh, they're just videos on the internet. They're not paying. If they are not paying for the fast lane, then they do not get to pass.
No, presumably they won't because their margins are very low. I'm told. Don't ask me about Schindler's Lust.
Oh, gosh.
Did you see the show title that I put for T4?
No, I missed it. Well,
it is Schindler's L***T. This is
I thought we discussed it was going to be not Schindler's.
It wasn't. It's L***T. Anyways, this is a subtle promo for our other show. So speaking of not so subtle legal problems, what's going on with Aereo and the Supreme Court of Los Estados Unidos?
Yes. This week, the case of American Broadcasting Companies, Inc. et al. Versus Aereo came before the Supreme Court. Let the oral arguments begin. I read about 3/4 of them. They were kind of boring. The broadcasting companies claimed that what Aereo is doing is they're transmitting a public performance without proper licenses. And Aereo is actually claiming that they're providing the hardware that maximizes the quality of the signal received and all of that, and that it just happens to reside in one of their facilities instead of in the home of the user. These arguments may make sense to you and me, but really that doesn't matter because the biggest concern is that on both sides is the ability of the Supreme Court justices to understand the actual technology that is at play
in
and
half
how
an
the
hour
decision could affect not only Aereo but the industry as a whole. In fact, Justice Sotomayor referred at one point to the Dropbox and the iCloud, and even the iDrop at one point. I couldn't tell if that was just a transcription error, but I'm pretty sure that she said the iDrop. I think that happened. So even if Aereo can get past the Supreme Court, though, which may or may not happen, they could be made irrelevant by the new fast lane provision of the whole net neutrality thing we just discussed. So, Trey, do you think that the concerns over the age of the Supreme Court justices is well founded? Because that's been like the big thing that all of the major news outlets have picked up, like Washington Post. I mean, we're Wall Street Journal, or
Look, okay,
even past that. Do you think Aereo even has a chance of getting through the Supreme Court?
I don't know. It is John Roberts sitting at the head of the court. So
Crazy.
never underestimate the ability of really smart people to learn things. Do you think they understand the nuances
They
of
also-
any
they also
other
have a bunch of
industry they
people
have to
helping
rule
them.
on?
Also, a bunch of people helping them.
Right. I mean, they have,
So many clerks and things.
they have clerks who are our age or younger. Look,
Really, really hard.
I'm sorry. This is a dumb argument. Oh, they're old people. Old people can't learn things. No. Like, screw all of you.
Logical fallacy.
I'm sorry. Like, these are incredibly smart people. Like, I don't fundamentally always trust the Supreme Court, but I trust that they can figure this crap out.
But
It's
you
not.
also don't trust them to be idiots.
I don't. Look, they're not dumb. They make a ruling, it's going to be because they understand it. Their job is to understand whatever it is they need to understand. And since they're the highest court of the land, dealing in both civil and criminal matters, they have to learn a lot of different things that they previously didn't understand, technology or no. We're no more complicated than any other industry that they have to rule on.
Well, in many cases, we're actually simpler because we're dealt with on a daily basis.
Right. So, like, these people have DVRs, right?
Well, and
These
actually,
people know what
Sotomayor
an
has a
antenna
Roku.
is.
Sotomayor has a Roku because she asked about how her Roku fits into this.
Right.
Um,
So these are like really smart and pretty rich people. I think they know. And
Well,
what they
so-
don't know, they can find out.
So this was me pulling on the like sensationalized headlines and things that people were writing because yes, there are quotables like the iCloud and the Dropbox and the iDrop, which actually I don't think anyone picked up on,
Which is actually kind of funny.
which is hilarious.
She could have been being funny.
I think the
You ever
iDrop
thought
was
about that?
her
Like,
being
the
funny.
Supreme Court justices are known for being really sarcastic when they think you're an idiot.
So Alito interrupted one of the two guys that was for the American broadcasting companies to make a joke, and he goes, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your argument."
Right. Like, she could have been taking the mickey out of them. Like, this is not a guarantee that, and I'm sorry, just the iCloud and the Dropbox just has.
I also
kind of
say the Facebook.
Originally it was the
facetiously.
Facebook.
Well,
So-
and
'cause he couldn't
also
get
somewhat facetiously because that's what old people call it.
Right. So, like, she's old. I get it. But that doesn't mean she isn't capable to understand.
But so I actually read most of that part I actually read the entire part where they're talking about the Dropbox and the iCloud, and the actual questions they were asking around that were very like deep understanding of how this ruling could affect the internet.
These are really effing smart people.
Like the questions that were being asked about Dropbox and iCloud were, okay, but you need to tell me how Aereo is different from. First off, you need to distinguish between Cablevision's like remote DVR thing
which
and
they
Aereo.
ruled on to.
And then you need to distinguish how Aereo is not like Dropbox and iCloud, and how we're not going to inadvertently, like I know the government is telling us not to look at this, but I don't care. You need to tell us how we're not going to affect these other things. Pay no attention.
Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. Like, yeah. You know what? I think they understand the issue.
I think they understand the
tech
issue. and
journalists, generally speaking, didn't read the transcript. Just saying, because the transcript isn't released right away. So, you know.
Well, Engadget did a good job because what they did was they said they pulled a little bit of that sensationalized headline, and what they did with it was they said, "And go read the transcript."
Right.
There was,
Turns out
it was like a paragraph, and the end of it said, "If you want to read this whole thing, here's the transcript. Go read it."
Right. Look, do I think they're going to rule the way we want to rule? We want them to rule? I don't know.
I think that they're going to be really. I don't think that they're going to rule on it. I think that they'll kick it back down.
What people who know the law infinitely better than I do are saying is that they're going to take a really narrow ruling, which could actually let Aereo go, but maybe
They're like,
not.
in this specific case, it's okay for Aereo to do this specific thing.
Maybe. So, I mean, we'll
Or in
find
a specific
out.
case, it is not okay for Aereo to do this specific
Right.
thing.
Right. I don't think it. I think they're whatever
This
they
is a big,
decide.
big,
It's
big thing.
right is going to make it so that Dropbox can still happen
Well,
because
the other question
no
is how
one's challenging.
is people that are actually placing the cables that connect the Aereo and your TV.
Right.
Like, how do you not penalize those people?
Right. So, look, I think they're going to rule super narrowly. I don't think Ario's going to make it out of this, but that's just because it's the Roberts Court, and he was, although there's not a whole lot of, you don't get elected to the Supreme Court, you get appointed. He was appointed under W and tends to, rule conservatively and thus rule in favor of the larger corporations, very generally speaking. That's not necessarily a totally fair, take on Justice Roberts, but whatever.
I'll be curious to read whichever way this goes. I'll be curious to read the minority opinion.
Yeah, and it sounds like we know who's going to write it. Sotomayor.
Sotomayor. Well, okay. I think if it goes for Aereo, she'll write the majority
Right.
opinion.
Yeah.
I think if it goes against, she'll write for the minority
Yeah,
opinion.
that
I think
Roberts
she's
will
on
write the
side.
majority opinion, and Sotomayor will write the minority opinion.
Yeah,
I haven't read, but minuscule amount of the transcript, but based on the questions she's asking, she's trying to pull out what are the broader implications if we rule sweepingly and against Aereo rather than narrowly and against Aereo, which is kind of where this sounds
Also,
like it's going.
I felt like the argument that the American broadcasting companies were making, that they're like, okay, it's like the difference between a car dealership. This is between the cable companies and Aereo. It's the difference between a car dealership and a valet, in that the cable companies are like a car dealership and Aereo is like a valet. I did not understand this. And the one that came in, and I think it was, I can't remember which justice it was, said, I think it's more like a parking garage.
Yeah.
Where you own the car and it's a public garage, but you still own your car.
So I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of, were I making this argument, what would I argue? And here's what I've come up with. So it's legal to rent an antenna, right? So I could open an antenna rental business, and I could say, hey, Jimmy, do you want to pay me $5 a month so you can have an antenna and physically fix it to your house? No one's going to argue with me that that's legal, okay? So what if I said, I'm going to rent you an antenna, and I'm going to attach it to a 3-mile-long cable, assuming I don't impede other people's ability to drive on roads and crap. Assuming I can legally run that length of cable, no one's going to get on me no matter how long that cable is.
But the argument is that, and the argument that's actually been made, and that's the argument that the cable providers are arguing against, is that by placing that 3 miles away, by not actually being in your home, it's not a private transmission. It's a transmission, which makes it public, which means you have to pay the licensing fees in order to actually have it.
Yeah, but so then what distance? What if I have a 3-mile piece of property?
I think that it's off of your understanding that something that's within your own home or on your property counts as yours.
So then, okay,
but
fine.
If it's off your property, it's like if someone.
So here's how you get around that if you're Aereo.
Using their argument is that if you put an antenna on your neighbor's house, then you are not, and then you run it across.
Why can't I do that? What if my neighbor gets better reception?
Apparently, I mean, that's.
So here's what you do. Here's what you do if you're Aereo. And they'll find a way around this, I'm sure. But so
I didn't quite finish reading the Aereo argument. That's the 3/4.
So okay, you say that's the argument is if it's not your property, broadly defined, then it's a transmission. Fine. Aereo not only rents you an antenna and a hard drive, but
it rents you like this
a
much
a postage stamp size piece of property.
Something that is the size of a bay that fits into the
That happens to be roughly like renting a safety deposit box. They rent you a safety deposit box sized piece of space, and then that's your property. That your rented property, as much as this studio is my property as a rental property. And so I just have a 5-inch by 5-inch rental property at an Aereo office somewhere. I theoretically could take mail there now. So that, I mean, look, this is dumb. Something I think is less dumb is a new phone. Well, sort
Wait,
of.
wait, wait, wait. Go back. You think a phone is less dumb? Is it an Apple phone?
It isn't a Apple phone. It is a OnePlus phone.
Oh man.
So you know those swanky invite-only clubs that we dream are full of rappers and strippers? You know those
Well, they
things?
are full of rappers and
No,
strippers.
they're actually really full of white guys in Bermuda shorts.
Oh man. Why are you always letting me down?
Yeah, I know. So now there's a phone equivalent of exactly that. A company called OnePlus will at some point release its first phone, aptly named the One. Stuck on that, HTC
Oh, wait.
and Microsoft.
I wonder what the second phone is going to be called.
The Two. Balmer may secretly be running this company. What do you call your first phone? The One. What do you call your second phone? The Two.
No, they'll do the One Plus, like they did the 8X. HTC did the 8X and then the 8X Plus.
Yeah, well, this is already like One and a Plus. So it will have it will have a crazy high-end Snapdragon quad-core processor, 3 gigabytes of RAM, an awesome Sony 13-megapixel camera that will probably be in the new iPhone. It will also pointlessly shoot 4K video.
Because why not? Features.
A 5.5-inch 1080p display, and a backplate literally made out of crushed cashews. I'm not even joking about that. It might as well be made of solid myrrh.
Sounds like shenanigans.
Yeah. It will run on a modified version of Android known as CyanogenMod. So what will this wonder and crushed nuts cost you? Just $300 for the unlocked 16 gigabyte model. Yep, it's cheaper and more higher endier than Jimmy's Nexus 5. But the issue, as I mentioned above, you won't be able to buy it unless you are invited. So, Jimmy, what are you going to do, and who will you do it to get one?
Well, this is a Chinese company, right?
I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Can I make a Tiananmen Square joke?
Nope.
Is that not allowed?
Nope.
No, I do think it is a Chinese company.
It is being put out. OnePlus startup founder was the former
Optimus Prime?
VP
What?
Peter Lau?
I'm just starting rumors now.
Yeah, so you talk about it and I'll research it.
I mean, it sounds like a good phone, but I'm going to make the argument of the Nexus 5 was announced like 7 months ago.
But I mean, the point is basically it's what the Nexus 5 probably will be, similar specs wise, for slightly cheaper. It's the price and the cashews that are interesting. The
slightly
specs
cheaper,
are just
cool camera.
Hong Kong, Shenzhen. So yeah, China.
Yeah. See, told you.
I just didn't know.
Yeah, the invite only thing is just weird to me. I don't know why. How do these people get selected? I mean,
that has not really been made clear to me.
I
I vaguely want one to try this out. This seems like a great.
mean, it's the same size as the Note 2.
Right. I mean, it's a great price point for what it is. I want this to be the way phones are just priced, realistically. But I mean, who knows, right? This could just be like Nintendo-esque marketing, right? Where it's like, oh, there's not that many of them, so you really want it, and so they'll sell as many of them as they can make.
I mean, I think that it'll be what. Yeah, I do think that is part of it. That they have a supply chain thing where they're like, we're not just going to make a shitload of these and then have them on the shelves and ready to go, but that way they can say, oh, well, it's exclusive, so that's why we don't have any. Like the Pebble smartwatch. I hate you guys.
That's super exclusive.
It's super exclusive, such that I ordered one like the day after you announced it, and I still haven't gotten one. The Pebble Steel. My ongoing battle with Pebble and their shenanigans. Oh wait, I haven't checked their website recently to see how they're telling me that I can't do my how I can't get my freaking watch.
You can't even cancel your freaking.
Yeah, that is the dumbest thing in the world.
The not getting it just sounds like tech launches. The not being able to cancel it sounds like fraud.
I think this is one of those things. This specific, the One Plus One. It's a really interesting phone. We'll see when it comes out though, because we have no details of release and availability or how these people will be.
We do know it's going to come to the United States.
Can I Facebook friend it and then get one? Like, is that how this works? Do I have to sell my soul on social networks? Like,
yes.
Always.
I mean, yeah. Like, it's the free to play. Like, you can get it if you tattoo their logo on your forehead,
I'm not doing that.
or get like the guy who got the Zune tattoo. Same idea, but like right here, kind of like
Just
prison tears, but like the OnePlus logo.
Just the OnePlus. I could rock the OnePlus logo. I think that'd be a good look for me. Very professional.
Nope. Nope. No.
Well, then we could get them to sponsor the show, the video version, because you'll be able to see it. This episode is sponsored by OnePlus.
You want to know who can afford to sponsor us? Apparently, Apple and Microsoft.
Yes, because they have all of the money.
Apparently.
So guess what time it is? It's earnings time.
I'm thrilled.
Right. And this week we had announcements from a variety of different technology companies: Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Pandora, a bunch of people. But I'd like to look at the earnings from the two classic top dogs, Apple and Microsoft. So first up, obviously, we have Apple because Alphabet. Apple's earnings beat expectations with Q2 earnings of $45.5 billion. They topped analyst expectations of $43.6 billion. So, $2 billion in the bag is pretty nice.
Jesus wept.
In addition, they gave us a breakdown of how many of their devices they sold. They sold 43.7 iPhones, which is up 17% year over year, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. That's a lot of millions of iPhones.
And they were predicted to sell something like 37 million iPhones.
But the iPhone 5C total flop really didn't help at all. Didn't do anything. It bounced, right?
Yeah, I didn't know.
It made no difference.
It
really
was irrelevant, really.
It really.
Except it's colorful and people like colors. So
I see them everywhere. So apparently it didn't do well on release day, which we kind of knew.
Hating someone that has one,
right,
it happens.
Like they're everywhere because of that price point, that subsidized price point. Turns out it's basically an impulse buy. So anyways, keep going.
The big disappointment for Apple was iPads, which missed their expectations of 19.7 million units, selling only 16.3 million.
Hey, I bought mine last quarter.
% from last year. So they're not doing, and this is with a refreshed, you have the iPad mini with Retina. You're still selling the iPad mini. They got rid of the iPad 2 and they're selling the iPad 4th gen for $400. And they have the iPad Air, which is very, very nice. And I would actually, if you're going to go for a 10-inch tablet, that's the one I'd get.
But answer me this: is anyone growing in the tablet sector, or is the tablet sector just bottoming out?
No, I don't. Okay, so I'd be careful with
reaching its apex.
I think that the tablet sector is going a slightly different direction with all of the Windows 8.1 tablets that are out there.
Are any of them selling?
Surfaces are selling.
Yeah, but not 16.35 million units.
No, but Surfaces are whatever. That we didn't get unit numbers from Microsoft.
For good reason, but it's not going to be a $1 billion write-down this year.
No, that's true. They did make 500. They had $500 million in revenue on Surface.
On Surface alone. But that doesn't count. I mean, that doesn't necessarily tell us anything.
Yeah, right. That's on both Surfaces and Surface Pros.
And that's revenues, not profits.
That's revenues, not profits. That's correct. So they also announced that they would split their stock 7-to-1 and increase their buyback program. To which, so the reason for splitting the stock was an attempt to make their shares more accessible for everyday consumers. And the reason for increasing the buyback program, Tim Cook said on the call, was because he thought that Apple was undervalued and wanted to buy back the stock to show how valuable it really was, or something like that.
So the stock has been tanking, and he was reacting.
Sounds like shenanigans. Well, but it
like
acted strongly upwards.
No joke.
It bounced back.
Yes, because Apple just announced a free money program.
Yes, it did.
Free money for share. You know what a buyback program is? Free money for shareholders.
Yes, and increased dividends.
Right. So no joke. Has nothing to do with the company.
So what do you think about Apple's earnings? We'll split this up. We'll do one at a time. What do you think of Apple's earnings?
It doesn't surprise me that iPads aren't doing as well, and you can firmly say that the iPhone 5C made a difference.
I mean, they sold like 5 million more iPhones than they were predicted to. Like, that is significant.
That's significant. And, if other phones sell 5 million units, it's significant.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, there are only 5 million Xbox Ones in the wild.
Exactly.
And that's how much Apple, and they're vaguely the same price, and that's how much Apple overshot the estimates. Okay? You can talk all you want about the challenges of Samsung and all of that. They, on a lackluster, it's not that I don't like the iPhone 5S and the 5C, but they are lackluster products compared to the improvements you saw in the 5, right? This was not a big improvement year. And they are beating analyst expectations in one quarter. Q2, mind you, not like Christmas. They sold 45.6, whatever it is. I can't, too many numbers. 43.7 million iPhones.
Million iPhones.
Right. So
not
like
43.7 iPhones like it says in the doc.
right. And then you read on the show. So like, I'm sorry. Like, you can talk all you want about the challenges of Android and all that, and I get it. Like, Apple just doesn't have the market share they used to. You know what they've never really been interested in? Market share. Like, ever. They got it in MP3s only because, like, everyone else is kind of meh.
Everyone else's stuff was just junk. Like,
just like plasticky and awful. And
I had a Creative Zen player, and it was a nice hard drive based. I mean, it was the same size. It was, or no, that's not the same. It was slightly thicker than the comparable iPod Color, but it was not. Or I guess it was iPod Video at the time. They both did video, but I was approving of. I don't have it anymore. I lost it. Like all of my technology.
It competed with this.
I either broke it.
This is an iPod Photo.
It competed with that.
It's okay. They're virtually indestructible.
As was the Creative Zen Vision M is the one I had, and it was quite a thing. But it didn't.
Competed with this. I have iPod Mini.
It was irrelevant compared to the iPod. The iPod just killed it.
Right. And so everyone thought, oh, like they had such an early lead in phones. That's what was going to happen. And Apple's like, are we making a lot of profit off this? Yes. Are we selling like a lot of them in a growing market? Yes.
Yes.
Are we beating analyst expectations? Yes. So
until analyst expectations got like out of hand,
and now they're back in hand, and so Tim Cook is standing on top of a pile of money, giving them the middle finger, like whatever. It's just like, hey, look, I split my stock and it jumped.
Wait, are you talking about their earnings where like they grew a bunch and then they dropped so they can give Samsung
so they can
middle
give
finger?
Samsung
Yeah.
joke from Tabasco.
Exactly.
Just so they give Samsung a middle finger. Like that's what he's doing. Like he's standing there like Scrooge McDuck in like a vat of gold, swimming naked with middle fingers flying everywhere.
With this little smug smile.
Just like that little smug smile. He doesn't have like the Steve like I won something. He's just like, yes, I know. Like whatever, dude.
I'm Tim Cook. I'm king of the supply chain.
Ask Samsung about their profit margins of their plasticky pieces of crap.
They're probably pretty good.
Not like Apple's, I'm telling you.
Yeah, they also probably don't move the same number of units.
Probably no, they probably do, but not of a single, of not of two phones.
That's a good point. That's a good
not
point.
of two phones.
Total, they probably move the same number of units, but
yes, but they vomit out devices in
they
every
also have like
possible
15 tablets currently available.
and they're also mostly crap.
Mostly? No, they just are crap.
I recently recommended you purchase a Samsung Galaxy Note 10, so what do I know?
That happened on the other show, which I still think is stupid. I'm not doing that. Surface Mini. You saw my email today.
Yeah, I saw your email today.
If Mary Jo is lying to me about Surface Mini, I'm going to be so disappointed in her.
So speaking of Surface Minis, tell me about Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft is actually not doing bad. Okay, so this is the thing that really got me with these two stories next to each other. So I always think of Microsoft as being a huge player in the space, and like you can never count Microsoft out. Sure. Microsoft had earnings of $20.4 billion, which is less than half of what Apple had.
Right.
And
I get that.
They barely beat analyst expectations of $20.39 billion.
They did still, let's be clear, they did still beat analyst expectations.
Who
cares?
Skin of their neck.
To quote a movie that I love dearly, it doesn't matter if it's by an inch or a mile, winning's winning. Fast and the Furious, for those of you who didn't.
The sales numbers for Microsoft that we should probably look at are the 1.2 million Xbox Ones that they sold in this is their third fiscal quarter because that makes sense.
Well, they're all numbered differently. Would this include or not include the launch of Titanfall?
This would include the launch of Titanfall.
Okay.
And they also sold 800,000 Xbox 360s.
Hey.
So their big push this past quarter was both in Xbox One and in Office 365, and it seems like that it's doing pretty well because they've got 4.4 million subscribers, and they say that they're up nearly 1 million just in this quarter, which would make sense because they introduced that whole like Office for iPad thing.
Right. Yeah. Now that wouldn't have been this
365.
Would that have been this quarter?
Yeah, because those two, remember they announced that at Build,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay, so this would have included build. Okay.
then like immediately upon it being released, they got to 1 million.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those they did not waste any time getting there.
Right. Well, I mean,
Uh,
it's an awesome thing.
it is an awesome thing, and it was a great strategy by Microsoft in general. And then finally for Microsoft and Trey's favorite Microsoft service, Azure
Yes.
grew its revenue more than 150%. We did not actually get real numbers on it. It was lumped in with another category, but we did get a slide that said it grew more than 150%. So yes, apparently Azure matters, Trey.
It turns out.
Turns
I
out.
I
So what do you think about the Xbox 360s versus Xbox One number? That's kind of
doesn't
my question.
that doesn't surprise me. The Xbox 360 is cheap now.
Oh yeah, it's like $200.
Right. So like I get it. Like keep in mind that like the PS2 outsold the PS3 for like half of its lifetime.
Yeah, it's because the
So
PS3 was like $600 and had no games.
and the PS2 was like $100 and had games for days. So it
Like
doesn't
yeah,
like I'm playing I'm playing almost exclusively last gen stuff right now because there's not that much coming out unless you're a big fan of Titanfall, which I'm a big fan of it conceptually, but I'm not going to play it because I would vomit.
I don't really play it.
Right. So like
I
I'm playing
play Second Son. I play FIFA.
right, but I'm playing through my backlog, and I just bought a PS3. I mean, I bought it used, so Sony doesn't get to count their numbers. But I just bought a last gen system now, and I have a next gen system sitting in my living room. So I get it. That makes sense. Actually, it's a good sign that Xbox One is outselling Xbox 360 because they both have
kind of how I
Titanfall.
read that. Now they both have Titanfall. Not in the previous quarter, did they? Though.
True. Look. I think this proves that Microsoft's doing all right. If they're willing to brag about we know what they'll do if their numbers aren't good. They'll bury them, right? And so here they are saying like, "Hey, we sold all of these Xbox Ones." They think they're doing all right. So this is not the doom and gloom scenario. The console war is not lost. It's just Sony is winning, but it's not has not won.
And then look at Office 365, which is a huge push for them, and look at Azure. I mean, they're doing great.
And that's the future. If you want to talk about what's the future of their company, it's those two last things you mentioned. It's Azure and it's Office 365. It's software as a service, which is now working, which is 365, and it's working really well. I recommend it to all kinds of people. And it's
All of the people.
And it's everything in the cloud, which is Azure, which can let you virtualize whatever you want in the cloud, whether it's Linux or Windows or whatever. You can virtualize it in this amazing cloud architecture. So that's the future. I mean, that's the future of the company, right there. Is those two things with Xbox probably tacked on with this devices thing tacked on. But you
Surface as well. Surface sold 500. I didn't say it, but sold $500 million. Although the who was I reading that from? I think that was from. It was either from Business Insider. No, that's from TechCrunch, where they were talking about Microsoft's earnings. They're like, this $500 million number sounds kind of soft. I don't know what this. What they're trying to say here.
Microsoft's really good at like cooking the books, not in like an illegal way, but in a way that like makes sales seem more steady than they really are. Because in reality, like sales spike and crater, and that doesn't look good in your financial reporting.
And so they'll do things that, like, I remember with Windows 8, they said, "Oh, we're not going to claim any of these sales after this date for this quarter.
Right.
We're going to claim them for next quarter."
Right, because we know next quarter's going to be rough. And so there may be some of that going on there. But speaking of really weird technology things, it's this week's last call. Apparently not.
Hello, last call.
Let's try that again. There we go. So, I lose things all the time. For the past 48 hours, I lost my Lumia 1020 because it's black and it blends in with the cup holders on my car.
This is why phones should not be black, because I have the same problem.
Right. So, apparently the art world had lost something as well. Works done by Andy Warhol on the Amiga. It's a computer.
Say what?
My childhood. You see, Commodore, the company that made the Amiga, recruited Warhol to do some art on the Amiga to show off how high-end and graphical it was for the time. Everyone promptly forgot he did this. Then, a new media artist called Corey Archangel, no joke, saw the art in a YouTube video of the advertisement and realized no one knew where it was. And this prompted a search by like Carnegie and the Warhol Museum. And eventually they found the art on a series of Amiga floppies. They found them.
People still have those?
Oh no, funny story. So the researchers borrowed equipment from the Carnegie Mellon University Computer Club, and bingo! We have the art. It's a pixel art of a soup can. What looks like it's done in Microsoft Paint. It's a Venus de Milo with 3 eyes, and a heavily modified self-portrait looking thing. I'm underselling the art. It's actually kind of cool, considering it was done on an Amiga. So you can check it out via the link in the show notes. But still, I'm wondering, how do you lose something like that?
Well, it was on floppy disks. They probably didn't put the proper labels on them. You know how those things are.
This is why,
and they lost that little like slidey thing that goes on it. And
right. And if you didn't label it, like then you didn't really know what was
you had
on
a stack
it
of like black floppy disks, and you went, "I have no idea what is on any of these."
Right, and you're kind of worried that it's all porn anyways. So, like
I mean, it did have images on it. You really didn't know what that image file was going to be until you opened it.
Right. So look, I just think it's cool that what he could do with the platform, with a computer so long ago, and it's actually some really cool stuff.
This is from the late '80s, correct?
Yes,
I believe
late '80s, early '90s, sometime in there. Anyway, I think it's just cool stuff, and I thought it was worth mentioning. But on that note, we should probably get out of here. If you have any feedback for the show, podcast at textlastcall.com, facebook.com/textlastcall, pinterest.com/textlastcall, or at textlastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.